Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 4 of our new and beginner livestock series. Remember, this is a multi-part series. If you missed the previous sessions, we have those recordings available, and we'll send out the recording after our webinar today. Today, we have Dr. Miranda Boomstra from the United States Department of Agriculture's Food Safety and Inspection Service. Miranda is a district veterinary medical specialist at the USDA FSIS, and she operates out of the Philadelphia district, which covers New York. We also have Deputy District Manager Joe Sheen. He is also at the United States Department of Agriculture Food Safety and Inspection Service, and he has been with USDA for over 30 years, working as a compliance specialist and for the past 8 years as a deputy district manager. And then we also have Corey Schreier from New York State Agriculture and Markets. Corey manages the Article 8 Commercial Feed Program and Article 5A Slaughterhouse Program for the state. He started with Ag and Markets back in 1998. He was hired to inspect live poultry markets and custom red meat businesses exclusively in the downstate region. And from 2000 to 2006, he worked as a food processing inspector, conducting inspections and investigations for food manufacturers and retail establishments downstate. He was transferred to Albany County, so upstate New York, in 2006, where he was a field supervisor for Zone 1, supervising a field inspection staff covering a wide range of food inspections within 17 counties until 2015. And that's when he started his present position, managing that Article 8 Commercial Feed Program and Article 5A Slaughterhouse Program for the state. So welcome, Miranda, Joe, and Corey to our new and beginner livestock series. We're really grateful to have you as speakers today. And we're going to kick it off with USDA's presentations. So we'll start at the federal level, and then we'll move down to the state level with New York State Ag and Markets. So Miranda and Joe, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us. I know Miranda has the presentation on her screen, so I will let her start with what she has prepared so far. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to help out and answer whatever I can. So I'll turn it over to you, Miranda.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so thanks for having us here. We're happy to be able to get you some information on the process of getting started under federal inspection and some of the things that are involved in making that happen on the paperwork side and on the practical side with what you're doing. So our purpose here, the United States Department of Agriculture Food Safety and Inspection Service is responsible for inspecting meat, poultry, and egg products for safety, wholesomeness, and proper labeling. So there's kind of the big picture of what we're doing. The history on this is that red meat inspection became law under the Federal Meat Inspection Act in 1906. So that requires inspection of red meat products that are sold in interstate and foreign commerce. So, the Act established sanitation requirements for the facility. It requires a review of all finished product labels for truthfulness and accuracy. So later on, the Poultry Products Inspection Act and the Egg Products Inspection Acts followed with similar regulations. So under the Meat, Poultry, and Egg Products Inspection Acts, FSIS inspects all meat, poultry, and processed egg products sold in interstate commerce. So my understanding is that you guys are from New York, and that's part of our Philadelphia district that we're operating out of here. We cover New York, New England, and Pennsylvania. So our district office, if you're interested in starting the process to become federally inspected, our district office in Philadelphia here is going to be one of your primary points of contact for all of your questions. Specifically, we've got a grant curator. Her name is Tisha Smith. I've got her contact info on here because in addition to the info that we'll give you in the presentation, and all of the information that we have on our website. She's a great person to be able to reach out to with any questions you've got about this process. So you'll see me several times through the presentation here that I'll have repeated her email and contact info to make sure that you know where each piece of information should go or who to ask. So getting started in this process, the steps that you're going to take. We have a form 5200-2, that's your application for federal inspection. In addition to that, you'll submit a design or drawing of your facility, and you're required to have a HACCP, which is Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point Plan, and an SSOP, which is a Sanitation Standard Operating Procedures. So I'll run through, what those are if you're less familiar. I know we might have a varying degree. Some of you may have done this before, some may not. So I've got information on how to get you help for getting those set up later in the presentation also. So once you've submitted your application form and the drawings, you'll get assigned a frontline supervisor for your area. They'll schedule walkthroughs of the facility. We'll kind of, get you through this step by step. So those HACCP and SSOP plans, those don't need to be sent in with the application, but I'm mentioning them since they're a big part of the process and something that you need to have completed and available for the inspectors to review before you get started. So first things first, getting access to and completing that form 5200-2. So that's the official application for your federal grant inspection. What you're going to be doing on it is providing the basic information about you, your facility, operators, plans. So it's got 4 sections to it. It's got 28 questions. And we've got a lot of guidance available for you on the specifics of getting this filled out the way that it needs to be done. I put a link on here for somewhere you can go online that will run through the details of it. And then also, again, the contact information for our grant curator here. She's got even PowerPoint presentations that run through every question on this to help give you a step-by-step guide of how to fill in the application. Once you've got that put together, you're going to email it to this philadelphia.curator@fsis.usda.gov. This is the email address that I mentioned. I'll have repeatedly through the presentation here to make sure you know where all your information should go. Here's just an image of what the main page of that form looks like, just so you've got a sense of how it appears. As I mentioned, along with that application, we just need to have a submission of your facility drawings and the design of it. So for some people, this might be very simple, very straightforward. Others, might be a larger facility with more involved. So this should be a hand-drawn, legible, made with sharp, clear lines, the drawing of what you want your premises to be. So we need to make sure that you're including the outer limits of the establishment's premises. This is important because as we're inspecting, we need to make sure we know what's on premises versus off. So we need to make sure that you've got certain details in there, obviously the outline of the buildings, a point of the compass, roadways serving the establishment, so we get a sense of where you are. On the interior spaces, you're required to have certain spaces for our inspection team and for your own employees to be maintaining sanitation. So we need to just have some of that marked on the interior spaces as well. Things like the employees' toilet and dressing rooms, office space for your inspectors, storerooms for supplies, basically any rooms or areas where you're going to be handling any ingredients or any product that's under inspection. We need to make sure we've got a sense of where that'll be happening. If you can include with this, please, a written description of what your inspection activities for federal inspection will be also. So this, once you've got that put together, is submitted with your application to that same email address, so that then we can review that and get back to you if we have questions, concerns, if there's any more information we need. For developing your HACCP and SSOP plans, because that's something that needs to be done and in place at the time that you apply. We've got a lot of contact information and help groups for the process of putting that all together. So I've put on this page HACCP consultant information. So this is phone numbers and emails that you can reach out to get assistance with how do I put all of this together, or if you've just got specific questions for different points of the process. We also have a team, and I can get you the full size version of this if that's helpful to anybody, but we've got a group for small and very small plants that's specifically set up to be able to help answer all your questions. So this is a great resource to be able to use, especially if you're new to this whole process of coming under federal inspection. So one note that I just wanted to make, because I guess this question comes up to our grant curator pretty regularly, is to just know that inspection will not be granted for applicants requesting inspection from their living quarters. So we've got regulations that just require that there be a separation there. So I've just listed that regulation here just to make sure you understand that to begin with, you know, that there's more to setting up your facility than having it be out of your direct living space or having direct access to your living space. So on this slide, I've put the general website where all of this information is accessible to you. There are a lot of examples on the website of, you know, not only instructions for the process, but samples, things you can pull from and put your own information in that can really be an easy start for you when you're just first getting this pulling. So there are generic HACCP and sanitation SOP plans to just help you see what it should look like, or for you to even directly use and put your information into. There's also a lot of contact information and links to different sites for you to be able to either see more or to contact somebody to ask questions. So there's also a virtual help desk. So for any individual questions you have that aren't addressed by this presentation or by the website info, you can ask your own specific questions directly through there, as well as, again, getting a hold of our office directly. We're always happy to help and to get you connected with whoever you may need to answer your questions. So once you've gone through that process and you're approved to begin running, when we're talking about slaughter establishments specifically, because there are, you know, you do have the option of just running as a processing facility, but I was under the understanding that most of you would be starting slaughter for red meat or poultry. Our inspection process starts when you're receiving the live animals. Antemortem inspection is what we call how we evaluate the animals, you know, prior to slaughter. We need to make sure we're doing a visual and physical evaluation of those animals. We want to make sure that they're healthy, that this is safe for the food supply. You know, so we need to actually take a look at them after they arrive, and we can let you know then if they pass antemortem inspection. That's where it begins. The humane handling of the animals is a primary concern of FSIS. So while the animal's on your premises, we've got guidelines that are in place and strongly enforced to prevent the mishandling of animals. So the FSIS inspection team that comes in and is there with you on the day-to-day, they're going to be, you know, watching your handling of the animals and documenting it. So after the point of slaughter, we also have post-mortem inspection. You know, there are some things that we can see very easily when the animals are live on arrival and we're watching how they behave and what their health looks like. Sometimes a perfectly healthy looking animal walks in though, and there are things that we find post-mortem that would affect, you know, whether that animal is used for the food supply or not. So we have post-mortem inspection as well to just do that further evaluation of the carcass and or parts. So as far as the humane handling side of things goes, I've got a few slides to cover that. We've got the Humane Methods of Slaughter Act that was put into place, which requires that the slaughtering and handling of livestock be carried out only by humane methods. Congress determined that this prevents needless suffering of animals, and it results in a safer and better working condition for the employees in the slaughter establishment. And this is something that the public is tracking much more closely as time goes on as well. They want to know, you know, that if they're going to be buying your product, that you're treating the animals well. So FSIS is monitoring this on all slaughter shifts. And one key component to this is that livestock must be rendered insensible to pain before being shackled, hoisted, thrown, cast, or cut. So that essentially means they need to be unconscious before you're doing anything further. The way that our team is tracking the humane handling in your facility is through what we call our HATS, our Humane Handling Activities Tracking System. So they're the ones doing the documentation on this, but what they're monitoring is how you're holding, managing, and handling the animals. And so we've got that divided into these 9 categories. And the purpose here is that we have it divided up so that they can monitor things like, when a trailer arrives and you're unloading the animals, is everything set up appropriately for those animals to be unloaded without hurting themselves? Do you have the right kinds of ramps? Is there anything protruding that would hurt them? Do you have your facility set up to be able to do this safely? Every facility is different. You might be holding your animals there for different amounts of time, running on different schedules. So we want to make sure that the animals have access to water at all times. Feed availability is if you're holding them more than 24 hours. So the inspectors are checking on that as they come through. They're going to be looking to make sure that there's access to water. Antemortem inspection is just as we run through that process, they're watching how you're handling the animals. So as you see that some of these categories are labeled as things like electric prod or alternative object use, they're watching to make sure that you're not overusing something like an electric prod or using it on areas that are very sensitive on the body, that you're treating the animals well, even as you're driving and moving them. Sometimes after a trailer ride, you'll have an animal arrive that is unable to walk anymore or appears sick in some way. We want to make sure that you've got the capability to handle that animal. So for suspect and disabled, making sure that we're not doing things like dragging those animals to another pen, or they need to still be treated appropriately while we get one of our veterinarians in to take a look. So having an option to have a covered pen for them is also another requirement. Maintaining your floorings. And so a lot of this you're thinking about beforehand too. If you are, building a facility or setting up an existing facility for this, thinking about your flooring, we want to, limit slips and falls. So having something that gives them good footing, or making sure that you're cleaning up any of the fecal matter and, just maintaining it so that things aren't too slippery. We don't want it to be dangerous to the animals. These bottom 2 categories are important ones as well. So stunning effectiveness, you need to have a plan in place for what animals you're accepting and what would be the appropriate stunning implement to use. So you've got options. I'll go over that in the next slide, but you need to make sure that the choices you're making are appropriate for that type of animal or that size, that age. A lot of things can affect your decision. And what we want to make sure of is that what you choose works on your first attempt. We run into issues if it's taking you multiple attempts to get the animal stunned. The final category on the list, conscious animals on the rail, is by extension, once you've got the animal stunned and you start the next stage of the process, if it's hanging from the rail, we can't have it waking up. Once it's stunned, we need it to stay out until death. So your process for your timing, for bleeding out, all of that you need to think about in advance, and just make sure that no animals are returning to consciousness. So I mentioned the stunning methods that you're able to choose. These are your options here: captive bolt, gunshot, and again, within that you can choose what is most appropriate for the situation. Electrical stunning is an option as well. And that's usually where you're passing the electrical current through the head, sometimes the head and then the heart. And then chemical, which is carbon dioxide, that we'll see, more often with swine and poultry for that one. The exception to the stunning methods list is if you've got a ritual exemption. So if you're running kosher or halal product, then stunning is not necessarily required. At those establishments, although some will still use stunning. So that's a separate option that you'll have gotten approval for separately. So throughout all of this, how are we working together with your implant team? We have weekly meetings where you can sit down with them, and this gives you the chance on both sides to bring up any concerns you've got, just discuss any happenings, what we do is, document those meetings or just any other important conversations in a memorandum of information. And so that's where the inspector will just document the conversation that was had. If there are any issues or problems that come up, a non-compliance record is how our in-plant teams document that as well. So, the idea here is that everyone has the goal of, safe food supply, and we like to be able to work together to make that happen. So the combination of both FSIS, along with the commitment and dedication of you, the establishment owner, will uphold consumer expectations and confidence to purchase a safe meat or poultry product. Food safety begins with you, the establishment, follows with our regulatory verification, and ends with the consumer. All right. So that is the end of what I have put together here. It's quite a bit of information, and I know we've got some question and answer periods set up for after this. I don't know, Joe, if there's anything you were wanting to jump in on before we convert to the next.
No, I was just saying that just so everybody, sorry, other line was ringing. Just so everybody's aware, part of the approval process for the grant of inspection also does require a background investigation, just so everybody's aware, and that is run through our compliance and investigative division, or Office of Enforcement Investigation and Analysis in DC. Because if you have a felony record, no persons with a felony conviction can hold a grant of inspection for a federal facility. Just so everybody's aware of that. And then, as Miranda said, our humane handling activities are monitored, and all of our administrative actions related as such are FOIA-able. So we do get a lot of requests from a lot of animal activist groups, PETA and such, do keep a close eye on that. So we are very committed to making sure that our humane handling efforts are very consistent across the board for the sake of that information getting out. Again, that's just another point of awareness for anybody who might be interested in obtaining a grant of inspection. They're two pretty important points, I think, that you need to be aware of. So, but thank you, Miranda.
Thank you, Miranda and Joe. I really appreciate you sharing some of the regulations that our new and beginner livestock producers need to be aware of before starting an operation. We're going to turn it over to Corey Skyer with New York State Ag and Markets now, and then we'll bring it back at the end for a larger question and answer session. So Corey, please take it away. Corey, are you still on the line with us? Can you hear us? All right, well, while we connect with Corey, maybe we can work on the question and answer session for Miranda and Joe. Oh, wait, it looks like we have Corey. Corey, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I put an extension on my headset, apparently not working. All right, so first of all, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. And I wanted to say that I like to do visual presentations, but for reasons outside of my control, I could not do that. So I'm going to be speaking verbally, but I will say that if anybody has any additional questions outside of the presentation and the Q&A, my information will be available, and certainly you can reach out to me and I'll walk you through anything that you might have. So what I was asked to discuss was, or is the 1,000 bird exemption that the state has, and also Article 5A New York State licensing for slaughterhouses. So let me begin with this because I get a lot of phone calls, and I think the first thing that people get confused with is the word exemption. Because for the purposes of my discussion, the exemption will be used in two ways. First, um, the Poultry Products Inspection Act, USDA, provides exemptions for those people that slaughter and butcher amenable poultry. Also, New York State has some of those exemptions in their laws, but in the New York State law, the exemption refers to those individuals or processes that are exempt from Article 5A licensing. So if you're doing these three activities, you're still operating under what's considered a federal exemption, and ours mirrors what theirs states. But essentially, it's in the law to say that you would not be required to get an Article 5A license as long as you abide by what the requirements are. So to go over them quickly, the first one would be a personal use exemption. That says that's for somebody who raises their own birds, slaughters them for their own personal consumption. The second one would be a custom operator. That's somebody who just provides a service. So they would butcher other people's poultry, give it back to them, and that again is for their own personal consumption. And then the third one is what is called the 1,000-bird producer-grower exemption. So these three activities do not require an Article 5A license. The 1,000-bird exemption is probably the most popular of those exemptions. So I'll go over it briefly. First is that the birds have to be of your own raising. In New York State law, what it says is you can slaughter any species of birds as long as you do not exceed 1,000 birds annually. There is an exception, though, when it comes to turkeys. One turkey is considered 4 birds. So if you're slaughtering turkeys in any denomination, essentially what it comes down to is it would be 250 birds annually that you can slaughter. Where it differs, though, with New York State and the federal regulations is that New York State further restricts how you can offer these products for sale. So there is, as I said, no license for the producer-grower exemption, and there's no inspection. So for that reason, when you operate as a 1,000-bird producer-grower, you can offer these birds off of the farm or at a farmer's market type venue. And all the sales transactions have to be retail, meaning you're selling them to the end user. If you take a look at the federal regulations, they do have more allowances for how you can sell them. But in the event that this comes up in the Q&A, some of the rationale behind that is because between Ag and Markets licensing and the Department of Health, they consider whatever products are coming into their facilities must be an approved source. And since there's no licensing or routine inspection of these facilities, that's why they technically consider it an unapproved source. So when you're operating under the 1,000-bird exemption, essentially you could sell to the end user, the consumer. As far as processing is concerned, all product has to be raw. So there's no further processing other than cut up. So you can sell a whole bird, you could sell parts, but there's no cooking, smoking, or grinding. And once again, that's because we're not conducting routine inspections at these locations. As far as registering, if somebody's interested in becoming a 1,000-bird producer-grower, what we have on our website, or if you contact me, hopefully it's on the website, we have a registration form, and it explains what the requirements are and the preclusions. And we keep that as a record just so we know who's operating out there. So that if anybody needs information on that, certainly you can contact me. As far as, let's say you're a 1,000-bird operator, and for some reason now, either you're going to exceed that number of birds, or you don't want to operate within the restrictions that are provided, and you're not going to go federally, then the option you have is you can operate under what is called the Article 5A New York State Slaughterhouse license. So for the Article 5A license, what it covers is you can slaughter amenable poultry. And when I say amenable, again, I'm talking about those poultry species that require federal inspection, but under this exemption that the federal government provides, as long as you abide by those requirements, they can be done on the state level. So we're talking about chickens, turkeys, ducks, geese, guinea hens, ratites, and squabs. So if you're processing under an Article 5A state license, you would be operating under one of the exemptions that the federal government provides. We don't enforce that, but we obtain that information for USDA in the event that they're doing an investigation or products found in commerce, and they have questions about what that operator specifically can and cannot do in terms of the specific exemption that they're operating under. So let me just go back to something I said too about these exemptions. This is for those exemptions that do not require an Article 5A license, and also for amenable poultry that's slaughtered under 5A. One thing to keep in mind is that these birds cannot cross state lines. So all sales are intrastate. They have to be sold within New York State. So keep that in mind if that's a consideration, or if you have interest in selling out of state, that's something you're going to have to take into consideration. As far as other species that can be slaughtered in an Article 5A facility, there are non-amenable poultry species. There's bison, water buffalo, captive raised deer, elk, rabbit. These species are considered exotic species. They do not require federal inspection to be processed, and therefore they're not operating under an exemption. So you can have a 5A facility that's doing both amenable species that would be subject to whatever the exemption requires of them, and then also non-amenable species that can be sold. And when it comes to those non-amenable species, yes, they be sold interstate? They can. But what we say is this, it's subject to that state, the incoming state, whether they're going to consider that an approved source. So for example, if I had captive raised deer and I wanted to sell venison to Vermont, there really shouldn't be an issue, but certainly it would be up to them whether or not they considered it an approved source. And I think in many cases, and in my experience, we've never had an issue with that. I think more so the reason why they like to have some discretion over it is, one, to control product that's coming possibly from an unapproved source, and also because they have their own operators within state and they may want to just benefit the operators who are selling similar product. So as far as the process for obtaining an Article 5A license, what we do is we have what is called an Article 5A new applicant packet. So within that packet, it's going to have the regulations. It's going to have a sample floor plan for you to use when you submit that to us. It's going to have some explanation documents, and it's going to have a checklist. So the checklist is what the operator or potential operator will submit to the regional office, and that information is provided in the explanation documents. It's broken down by county, which regional office you would contact. So when you take a look at the checklist, the majority of the questions deal with the construction of the facility. And when you check off that you acknowledge, or yes, that these things will be in place: physical facility, separation, equipment, location of sinks. When you check that off, you're not saying that the facility has already been constructed and it's ready for inspection. You're essentially acknowledging that you understand what needs to be in place at the time of your preoperative inspection. So what'll happen is the regional supervisor will review your plans, and then if everything is in order, they will forward it to our Albany office, and then we will provide an Article 5A license application. Unlike other applications for the state, the Article 5A license application is not readily available because there are these preoperative or these prerequisites that need to be in place. And just going back to the checklist, one of the first few questions deal with zoning, and that's something that I think everybody should pay attention to. That's one of your most important aspects when you're going to apply for an Article 5A license. You definitely want to check with the city, town, and municipality and make sure that your location is appropriately zoned. And you're actually going to have to get that in writing from that entity, and that would be part of the checklist that you would submit back to us. That's one of the documents that you would be providing, so we know that you are actually approved to conduct slaughter operations at that location. So essentially, you would be submitting the checklist, a copy of a floor plan. It's a sample floor plan that we provide, so it's very rudimentary. It's not something that you have to get an architectural drawing or blueprints, as long as it depicts accurately what's there. Most times in the city, we do get blueprints and floor plans because they have to go through the city to get approval for construction. So either way, most times upstate, that's what we're receiving. So you're going to submit the checklist, the floor plan, a letter from the town approving that you're zoned appropriately. And also, if you're on a private water supply, that your well was tested and that your water is potable and it was tested for nitrite, nitrate, and coliform. Once we have that paperwork in order, we provide the applicant with the Article 5A license application. So at that point, it's really up to you when you get that back to us. Okay, that might be the time, if your floor plan was approved, that you want to start to begin construction of the facility. Once you are ready for inspection, what we tell people is it's about a 2-week window. When you contact us, it's about 2 weeks, 2 business weeks turnaround time for us to set up that preoperative inspection. And what will happen is the inspector for your area will contact you at the contact number you provide, and they'll schedule the inspection, and then they'll do your preoperative inspection. And if everything's in order, then you will be issued an Article 5A license, and you will be a licensed 5A slaughterhouse. The regulations contain all of the requirements for sanitary facilities, employee practices, and also covers the slaughter and processing of exotic species. So if we're talking about bison, in most cases, we're dealing with owners and farmers where they might be doing on-farm slaughter. So if you take a look at the regulations, it would require a vet certification that the animal was ambulatory and sound. So if it is slaughtered off-site, they would have that vet certification. The animal would be transported to the 5A facility. That certification would be kept on file for approximately 1 year. And that helps to satisfy the slaughter process, because many of our operators, if they're not situated to do such large animals, oftentimes they're going to see if they can do on-farm slaughter. Other than that, that is basically it as far as what I have for you. I don't want to go into too much detail as far as the exemptions are concerned. For the state, we cover both the facilities downstate, which are considered live bird markets, and primarily upstate, what we have are slaughterhouses. These are people, producer growers, small enterprise facilities. These are people that are processing, not more so for retail customers, though they can. They're doing wholesale distribution. They can, in many cases, they could sell to retail stores and other distributors, hotels, restaurants, and institutions. But keep in mind, once again, this is not something that New York State enforces, but we would certainly bring it to the attention of USDA. These exemptions have limitations. So for example, if you're processing under an Article 5A license, if the amenable poultry that you process within your facility is likely going to be held to a bird limit. So 20,000 birds annually is what you would have for a producer grower or a producer grower other person. So essentially what it comes down to is this. These are poultry products that would normally be required to be done in a federal plant, but they give you the opportunity to do it at the state level without the benefit of bird by bird inspection. But certainly there are preclusions as to who you can sell to, how you can sell, and what amounts you can sell. But that's essentially it. And as I said, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to walk you through the process. And I thank you for the time.
Thank you, Corey. We appreciate you coming to the webinar today to share some of that background with our new and beginner producers. So let's open it up for questions and answers during the last 20 minutes that we have together today. If you want to raise your hand or just unmute yourself to ask your question, feel free. You can also type your question into the chat. So what questions do we have today for Corey, Joe, and Miranda?
Hey, I didn't have a question, but I did want to make one additional point, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So I wanted to thank Corey for his presentation on the poultry exemptions there, but I just, again, wanted to make everybody aware, the poultry exemptions tend to read like IKEA instructions. For anyone who's ever tried to put something together from IKEA, it's not always the easiest thing to understand. And a lot of the problems we run into, and this is kind of what I wanted to make the group aware of, is that a lot of the folks who are trying to take advantage of the poultry exemptions try to pick and choose parts of the different exemptions and create their own exemption. That always tends to be the biggest problem we see, at least from the federal side. And I'm not sure if Corey's having similar issues on the state side, but from the federal side, that tends to be one of the bigger problems, that people want to pick and choose different parts of different exemptions to fit what they want to do. And it doesn't work that way. You kind of have to pick an exemption and stick to the guidelines listed in that exemption. So I just wanted to make that clarification point.
Yeah, I would just jump in real quick to give the time for Q&A. It is that case. It's not an a la carte menu. When you pick an exemption, you go down the line, and that is what you're allowed to do. And there's some things that people get confused about. For example, if I was a small enterprise operator, that allows me, that's the one exemption that allows me to slaughter other people's poultry as well as my own, but the processing stops at cut up. Where if I'm a producer grower, I can grind. And that's why when I discuss this with people, I want them to understand and read through the two, because there's some things that if that is what you want to do, you need to know that moving forward, because if it's more important to you to slaughter poultry for other people who could then turn around and sell it, you need to know what the processing parameters are. So when I provide them with the table of exemptions, and we do, Joe, I do stress to them, do not pick and choose. You can't create your own. It's not a custom menu. And yeah, we do see that from time to time.
Oh, well, thank you for confirming what I'm seeing on my end as well.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that.
Great. And is that table of exemptions something producers can look at online, or do they need to contact you, Corey, or you, Joe?
Is it on our website? I believe it is part of our website, Poultry Exemptions. I'll double check it, but I'm almost positive you can find it on the FSIS website. I'm not sure if the state has a separate, the individual states, I'm assuming, have a separate section for that as well, since some of the exemptions vary state to state, as Corey said, but I'll let Corey answer that one for New York.
Yeah, for us, what I do is I provide, our website is greatly lacking. So we're working on that, and we can make a link to it, because it's hard sometimes because we're a state agency, you know, what we put on our website. It's not a problem for me because I think people should have the most information available to them. So we would do it as a link, but oh, by the way, this is federal exemptions. So we can discuss it as much as we can to a point, but we can make it available. And usually what I'll do is I'll discuss it with the people and provide it to them on a case-by-case basis. But if there's no issues with my department, we can certainly link it so people can see what the different exemptions provide.
Great. You also mentioned the new producers packet. So if we have any producers on the line that are thinking about poultry and, thinking about that 5A license, would they contact you, Corey, or did they go to the website first?
I believe that the new the Article 5A new applicant packet is on the website, and if it's not, it will be shortly. But when they contact any regional office, they will be provided with that application. So yeah, it's something that we're working on, and it should definitely be put on the website so people don't have to contact an agency to get that information if it's off hours, what have you. But if they do contact me, that's the first thing that they receive.
Great.
Oh,
What other questions do we have on the line?
I just wanted to add, I did confirm that you can find the poultry exemptions on the FSIS webpage.
Great.
I just did a quick search from the main page and it brought me right to it. So yes, they are available. I thought they were, but I wanted to confirm. So
Great. Could you pop that into the chat, Joe, so that the participants on here and the ones that watch the recording can grab that link easily?
let me see if I can cut and paste it in there. Sure.
Otherwise, the one I had would be the main page.
Otherwise, we'll
Oh,
find it. And
The
send it
one
out.
so Miranda got kicked off, so she came in my office here. And she said the link for our page is in her presentation. So that is the main page there. So everybody should have it.
Great. Okay. Kim asks if this presentation was originally scheduled as session 7. Yes, and I will share kind of our upcoming series schedule while we're waiting to see if there are any additional questions.
Steph, while you're waiting for questions, I'd also just want to mention, if I fail to, is that the Article 5A license, so people are aware, is for amenable poultry, non-amenable poultry, and exotic species. Red meat, amenable red meat, that means red meat species that have to be done under federal inspection cannot be done in an Article 5A facility. Just so we're aware, it's not a state inspection that you can do, intrastate commerce for cattle, sheep, goats, lamb, etc. That always has to be done under federal inspection or on a custom basis. The 5A license does not cover amenable red meat species.
Great, thanks for clarifying that. Maybe one other question that might help is, for what size of facility are folks needing to reach out to Ag and Markets or USDA Food Safety and Inspection Service? Is everyone regulated under the state and federal laws? Can you just clarify that for our new producers who might be thinking about really small operations?
From the federal side, we have facilities of varying sizes and abilities, from very small mom and pop type places with 1, maybe 2 employees that maybe slaughter 1 or 2 animals daily, up to extremely large facilities that slaughter, 2,000 animals a day on the red meat side. So yeah, we handle anywhere in that scope. So, and they're all treated and by the same set of rules under the federal regulations. So.
Now, on the New York side, this comes up sometimes as well. There's no minimum requirement for square footage. What we tell people is you have to look at the space that you're going to operate in. What we're concerned about is food safety. So do you have the ability to process this animal and not create a condition of cross-contamination, whether it be from feathers or otherwise? We don't say that the place is too small, but if we went in and we said, well, we have a problem here because I don't know how you're going to separate operations, that would be the situation. But we don't say it's too small or there's a minimum size requirement. In fact, we allow for places, if they can meet the requirements, we have mobile slaughter units. And essentially that's a trailer that's supposed to be situated with the same requirements that you would have in a facility. So that separation between the killing area and the dressing area, if they can satisfy that, then they can do it. So that's really the answer. And as Joe said, I've seen a ton of places and they go from holes in the wall to large scale operations. So it's really up to you. And then when we conduct inspections, essentially we're looking at your ability to process that product so it doesn't become adulterated or misbranded. So there's not a definite size requirement, but keep in consideration as the operator, what's going to be feasible for you to satisfy the regulations and operate to the best of your abilities.
Great, thanks for clarifying. So just a reminder to all our participants, this is an 8-part series. Today was session 5, Meat Science and Regulations, and we did swap sessions 5 and 7 due to some scheduling issues. So next week will be Introduction to Sheep and Goats, then we'll do an Introduction to Swine, and then we'll end the series in August with livestock auctions. And a reminder that these are all recorded, so you can attend live or watch the recording later. Are there any other questions for Miranda, Joe, or Corey? Sean, were you trying to ask a question?
All is well.
I'll take that as a no. All right, well, thanks everyone for joining today. We really appreciate Miranda, Joe, and Corey's time. And we will follow up with a link to the recording and send out some additional contact information for our speakers. And we'll also share the links that were mentioned when we send all of that out later today. I hope everyone has a great holiday weekend.
Thank you. And then all the best to everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a safe and healthy holiday weekend.
Great. Bye.